All right, so this next one, we were chatting about it earlier. We've had a pretty awful week as far as cyclists versus cars and accidents go. So this one can probably go off in a few angles, but the specific question is, should there be harsher penalties for car versus bike accidents, regardless of whose fault it is? And this comes from the law in the Netherlands, where if a motor vehicle hits a cyclist, the accident is always assumed to be the driver's fault, not the cyclist's. So maybe some commentary on what we've gone through over the last week, and then also what you think of this specific law or outcome.
P, do you want to go? I have to see you.
Look, I think we've had
recently crashed into.
Yeah, look, I think we've had a pretty awful week or so on Victoria's roads, especially with some few tragic incidents and some serious injuries happening. I think any kind of law or legislation that's going to protect cyclists and protect their safety is always going to be a good thing. Accidents do happen. Like my case, I truly believe that it was an accident. There was no texting or anything like that involved, which I think is a major issue for all drivers on the roads, is staying alert and looking where they're going and all that kind of thing. But any kind of legislation that's going to be in favour of cyclists is going to be a good thing. We have to remember too that we've just come off winter. There hasn't been that many cyclists on the road. Now it's coming into the warm weather. You ride on beach road and there's hundreds and thousands of cyclists out there. The volume of cyclists increases. The amount of cars on the road stays the same. I think of course there's going to be more incidents out there and all that kind of stuff. So I think just about everyone being aware of what they're doing. Drivers need to be aware of what they're doing, cyclists need to be aware of what they're doing, and as I said, any legislation that's going to be in favour is probably a good thing.
For me it's a difficult one to come around to. Obviously it's an emotional issue for a lot of cyclists that have been involved in an accident. I think generally more rules don't make it safer. What does is education but also empathy for people that are riding. For me, it's not acceptable that there's so many riders getting killed on our roads. We shouldn't just sit back and accept that as normal, as part of the, something that we should be angry about it. And we need to continue to pressure, the government to Amy G. Luke Foundation is a great example of, an active body, but I think, we need to continue to be proactive and have the right message consistently as cyclists. And a lot of that also means, a lot of cyclists need to be more responsible about their own behaviour as well. And that, I think that works two ways, that street. We need to be better behaved on the road. We need to abide by the rules. If we want to be respected, we have to show respect for the riders. And I know all of us have probably been in instances where we've gone through a red light or whatever. Personally, I've just stopped going through red lights a few years ago because I think in my position, in the industry, I need to show some example, some leadership.
If you're a sponsored athlete and you're riding in a team kit, you need to follow the rules. You're
social conscience.
Exactly. You're representing who you're riding for, and so I think everyone needs to follow the rules that are there to be followed. So
there's only going to be more and more of it. As V said, we're coming out of winter now, and our community was greatly impacted this week with a death of a cyclist, and it's purely an accident. We're very easy to blame and look to blame. Infrastructure, bike paths and all that sort of stuff, but if we want to lay blame, it's too negative to create positives out of. We need to be trying to educate not only the rider but drivers, the whole education process. Go back to the schools, be engaging in that way, and I think it's some responsibility, and maybe put on to cycling clubs to go and do school, workshops and that type of stuff, or bike shops. Engage their schools, not just purely on a bike maintenance sort of scenario, but planting the seed for the educational process. There's a lot of stuff going on in society at the moment that really affects the way that we do our day-to-day living. We're dealing with an epidemic, and I'm actively involved in the community where I'm at, and we talk about ice, and it affects people, and we have people driving on the roads who are drug dependent, you know, under the influence. It is something that the educational process we need to cover off, and it does go. You know, I know cycling is one part of it, but we're going to have more and more people riding. But the easiest thing to do is to kick our governments, to kick our local governments, and all that sort of stuff. You know, we're crying out for infrastructure where I come from. But the community is developing so rapidly. You know, it's easy to poke the finger out and go, hey, but it's too hard to put your hand up and help. And you know, we've all got a responsibility to do it, because it doesn't cost a lot. And you know, everyone can do it. And I'm passionate about it. You know, community involvement, social awareness, all that sort of stuff. You know, right or wrong, but yeah, it really upsets you. You know, and you can tell that the whole tone in this conversation has changed, because in one way or another we've been affected by it. And you know, we ride bikes to be passionate and create something that's good for us, and it could be good for everyone. But yeah, who's right or wrong, and who do we blame? Apparently 10 to 15 years ago, the Netherlands had the worst riding culture, deaths on roads and bikes, you know, so there's been something that's changed there, you know. Can we learn? We can always learn, but you know, which is the right way to go? Right now I wouldn't be belting any government, because we don't need the barriers. We need those barriers pulled down, and try and get everyone on the one page if we can. So it upsets me, you know, because it's hit close to home. And I know our very small community of cyclists, you know, I only know what happened through our phone calls that we fielded, you know, the impact that it has on just us. So it's pretty powerful. Yep. For the wrong reasons. So let's hope we can get some positives and move forward. So
yeah, absolutely.
Put a dampener on things, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, it's a pretty heavy one, but it's that's if there's a more important issue out there as far as cyclists and people go, I couldn't think of one. Like, if people are dying on roads, and if it's something that we can prevent or stop, or like you said, put some education in to try and alleviate that. Like, no one wants to get that phone call. Like you said, people didn't know who it was for X amount of time. Yeah, I'd hate to get that phone call, or my wife to get that phone call, or yeah, it's just.
Yeah, and the person driving the car too, you know.
Yep.
Definitely, the person, you know, the people that drive the cars also, especially when it is a true accident. You know, it's awful for them as well, you know.
Yeah. What's the right way to do it?
Yeah.
I think infrastructure is a big thing. You know, the more cycling infrastructure there is, the safer cyclists will be. You know, there's many countries out there that when they build a road, they build, you know, bike infrastructure straight away. And, you know, maybe that's something that we need to have in Australia, that, you know, all new developments have some kind of cycling infrastructure put into place, you know, at day dot. So, you know, there are a lot of things out there. I think that Australia could be leaders in their field. I think that, you know, it's just a matter of time, and we'll get there eventually, playing catch up.
I think, you know, everyone has a real energy to help, but there's a lot of people going off in different directions, and sometimes, you know, you can't fight every fight to win every battle, you know, and collectively a larger group makes a louder noise. So obviously, if we're chasing infrastructure, and for the Amy Gillett Foundation, for example, has got some weight and numbers behind it, and some ability to push, you know, maybe coordinate approach and to do it that way, because, you know, we've got a group out in our community. There's 3 different groups, when really there should be one. You know, there's all energy going off on all different sorts of tangents. When, hey, you know, but that's just a growth and a structured process. So. And you've got to be prepared to lose a few battles. At the end of the day, the outcome is that I think education is the most important thing, you know, across everything. Don't know. Yeah, that's where I would be starting. Go right back to the schools.